Thank y'all for coming out. I'm John Schleuss. I am the president of the NewsGuild-CWA. We're the largest union of journalists in North America. We represent workers at Radio Free Asia, but we represent a lot of different journalists at the New York Times, Reuters, the Associated Press, and others. But we also stand with all journalists seeking truth and holding the power to account. So that's why we were proud to join this lawsuit. Journalists provide life-saving news, and that is exactly what journalists at Voice of America, Radio Free Asia, Radio Free Europe, and other newsrooms do. Other unions represent other workers in this lawsuit. So we've got the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME. We've got the American Federation of Government Employees, AFG. We've got the American Foreign Service Association, AFSA. But there's also 6 named plaintiffs in this lawsuit, alongside Reporters Without Borders. So Voice of America, Radio Free Asia, and Radio Free Europe are congressionally mandated. So Congress has passed legislation, including the most recent continuing resolution, to make sure that these programs continue. They are mandated by Congress. And the President Trump and Kari Lake don't have the authority to shutter the U.S. Agency for Global Media and terminate journalist jobs. So that's why we filed lawsuit last Friday. The shuttering of these newsrooms provides a massive win for dictators who are focused on destroying a free press all across the world. What our folks do at Radio Free Asia, what the journalists do at Voice of America, is to make sure that news goes into countries that do not have the right to a free press, which is something we in America hold dear. Today, in the Southern District of New York, what we've asked for is a temporary restraining order. So we've asked for that temporary restraining order here in the Southern District of New York to freeze everything, to get a hearing so that we can bring journalists back to the job, make sure that our members, our union members, are back to work, and fight this illegal action by the executive branch. This is a part of a long, troubling pattern by Donald Trump. He's targeted journalists at CBS News for 60 Minutes reporting. He's blocked Associated Press members from being able to attend White House events. He's blocked Reuters and Huffington Post and others, and he's also seized control of the press pool. So today we're going to hear from a couple of journalists at Voice of America and Radio Free Asia to tell us about what they do. But this executive order that Trump signed on March 14th effectively shut down Voice of America, and it killed the grant funding for Radio Free Asia and for Radio Free Europe. And these newsrooms, as I said, broadcast into countries with repressive regimes that try to block a free press. But the journalists themselves are independent, and there's mandates for them to be independent so that they can do this journalism without fear, without favor, and without interference. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve Herman now. Steve is the Chief National Correspondent and former White House Bureau Chief for Voice of America.
Thank you, everybody, for coming, and thank you for your support. This is a genuine constitutional emergency. As we speak, government officials have forbidden journalists from reporting and broadcasting the news. That's the opening statement of the preliminary seeking a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction in the complaint against the U.S. Agency for Global Media. I'm speaking here today as a former board member of the American Foreign Service Association and a current member, and as one of those who has filed a petition today on behalf of my colleagues in support of the complaint that was filed on Friday. As the complaint states, Congress's statutory mandate that the Voice of America continually broadcast to the world is being defied, shutting down VOA, Radio TV Marti, RFERL, Radio Free Asia, Al Hurra TV, and Radio CWA is unconstitutional and unlawful. The defendants have maligned VOA journalists without basis, as incompetent, and even as terrorist sympathizers. As the filing also outlines, VOA's journalists and broadcasts have been silenced. Those journalists on J-1 visas face imminent return to their countries, where some would certainly face prosecution and prison. USAGM has no authority, according to the filing, to shut itself down, notwithstanding Congress's decision to create the agency and provide it with funding. Congress has required VOA and RFA to actually increase programming to North Korea and provide round-the-clock coverage to Iran. Our complaint also states that VOA's statutory firewall has been violated by USAGM That's a firewall that protects the independence and integrity of our journalists. VOA is to represent America, not any single segment of society, and to present a balanced and comprehensive projection of significant American thought and institutions. The defendant's actions have cut off credible reporting and news unfiltered by government agenda or politics to hundreds of millions of people who listen to the radio and watch on television, including those in Africa, China, Iran, Myanmar, Belarus, Russia, Ukraine, and North Korea. And also we broadcast to Tibet, the Tibetan diaspora, and even to the Rohingya in refugee camps in Bangladesh. In my petition filed today, I note the abrupt cessation of programming and broadcasting has disrupted the core mission of the Voice of America: to inform, engage, and connect people around the world in support of freedom and democracy. VOA's credibility, carefully built over decades, has been severely undermined. The long-term consequences of silencing VOA will reverberate globally, eroding the influence and moral authority of the United States at a time when factual, independent journalism is more vital than ever. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Tibetan, of course, which is my language and my country. Then Uyghur, the East Turkestan people. Burmese, which is under dictatorship or the army junta. And then all other Korean under Kim Jong-un, and Tibet under Tibet, and all other, many states under Chinese Communist Party. So why we are asking the Trump administration to reinstate the funding for us, why we need to protect and fully fund this RFA, I would like to say something in written form. Thank you. And I'll read it as soon, as quickly as possible. First is the U.S. national security concern. RFA and all such government-funded U.S. media serves as a powerful counter to China's global soft power play. From President Obama to Biden and Trump, U.S. Congress has identified Chinese government-funded entities such as Confucius School all across USA and across the world as an agency of CCP. Outreach to influence public mind. RFA was among the first major media to bring this light to light, and that resulted in a series of congressional acts to curtail China's influence. Second one is RFA and is one of the leading media organizations to report consistently and in-depth on Chinese expansionist policy across East Asia and South China Sea at the cost of U.S. interests in the region. These investigation and reports have informed the government and Congress on China's ambition, and many subsequent congressional resolution acts to counter China's expansionist ambition, such as closer military alliance and support for Taiwan, for example. Third one is, excuse me, to bear with me, sorry. Please, okay. Third one is counter-authoritarian regime. China is one of the most authoritarian regime where basic human rights and freedom of speech is non-existent. State media shapes all facets of information in China. The U.S. Congress funded RFA as an alternative media platform to ensure access to information without censorship and counter wherever such freedom are denied. Because of RFA, the world was better informed to understand the ground reality in Tibet. In 2007, for example, in the months leading to the summer Beijing Olympic, RFA Tibetan Service was the first to break the news of revolt led by a group of monks in Lhasa, the capital city of Tibet, followed by nationwide revolt against China and subsequent brutal crackdown that drew wide international concerns and condemnations. This development ultimately resulted in the first U.S. Congressional Tibet Policy Act. Then for decades, RFA and WO played a crucial role in reporting on Tibetan issue, both inside and outside Tibet. Despite China's tight control over media within Tibet, these outlets have served as an essential source of uncensored information. WO and RFA have served as a lifeline for all people under authoritarian regimes. For Tibetans, WO and RFA assures that His Holiness the Great 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet remains well and continues to inspire not only Tibetans but people all over the world. If RFA and WO and other such media funded by US Congress is shut down, it will be a loss for Tibetans and others under communist regimes, but it is a disservice to truth, press freedom, humanity as a whole. So it is an example of such things, and this applies to all RFA and WO language services. Therefore, I am, on behalf of all language services at RFA, request our most honorable President Donald Trump to reinstate funding for RFA and VOA. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Sonam.
Thank you, everybody.
It's an absolute privilege to represent these clients. This is a case where Congress has spoken and Congress has said there needs to be two things. Number one, free press for the world, and number two, free press for the United States. And by that I mean Congress has said that these journalists and the men and women who support them, the engineers who throw the switches and then do the broadcast, they are all entitled to First Amendment protection. They all enjoy the right to free speech, and President Trump and his hench people cannot change that. We have sued Kari Lake and Victor Morales in this case to arrest and reverse the dismantling of the Voice of America. It's an outrage. After almost 80 years of continuous service, the Voice of America is today silenced in this country. Journalists are today being told not to report, not to write, not to give their opinions, and that is not America. So we're here in court to do this today. We have some legal arguments, but basically they boil down to the old saying that we New Yorkers have: they just can't do this, okay? This is America and they can't do this. We have a Constitution and it needs to be respected. So if anybody has questions about the technicalities of the lawsuit, I'm happy to respond to those.
I have a question about so now you're saying that today you guys are here, but what other meetings will you have moving forward?
So there will be right now the schedule is there will be an appearance in court in front of Judge Etkin in this building, actually in 40 Center Street on Friday at 10 a.m. To hear the arguments, and then we'll get a ruling. And that may get extended, we'll see. But what we are asking for today is to arrest the dismantling of the agency.
Thank you.
Thank you.